Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Engineering Advice You Didn't Ask For. We are back for our last episode for this season 2, episode 10. Today, just before we started, we were all getting a little nostalgic around how we met and where we started. For today's episode, we go a little deeper into our side hustles. My name is Keyur. I am an engineering manager at a company based out of Toronto. I used to be a co-founder and CTO of an e-commerce based company. Tiago, do you want to go next?
My name is Thiago. I'm currently Director of Engineering at Nubank, and I had many side projects over the last 15 years. I think the first one that I had was building some systems for some companies during nights and weekends back in the Java days. And I made a lot of money actually doing some freelancing on the side. And it helped me to learn a lot, actually, to have to put something together over a couple of weeks to make a couple of extra thousand reais at the time.
So I actually haven't told my co-host this, but I am no longer a full-time worker and have decided to go all in on my side projects. But till now,
small better.
So that's what I was doing the last 2 weeks. Until now, I have been an engineering leader at various startups and had a bunch of side projects. My first one, the first one I made $1 on, was a direct-to-consumer COGS calculator that I'd put up on Gumroad and didn't know how to market and didn't know what to do with it. And then now we're here.
You should say what COGS is for people that don't know.
Cost of goods sold. Lots of fun CPG, consumer product goods, and consumer packaged goods and physical product things I can talk about it in a later podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Louis. And yeah, I've had a lot of side projects over my career. Most of them have failed. They haven't made any real money. But then I decided to make side projects like my main thing. So over the last year, all I've had is side projects. I sort of shifted my entire journey through entrepreneurship from working on one big startup to just trying different things. And yeah, I made maybe $100,000 last year, which is a sort of a far cry from an engineering or big tech salary. My salary was a lot higher than that. But this year, I'm on track to make more than that. So the cool thing is the side project stuff can work if you stick with it and put out a whole bunch. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this topic, actually, because I think we were going to talk about what to do if you get laid off. Like, you should do this before you get laid off. They start making some money with some side projects.
Yeah. Oh, we're doing intro first, right? So my name is Vic. I am a principal engineer at Twilio. I have previously worked at startups and medium tech companies and whatnot, but I do have several side projects. A couple active ones are I run a software as a service for preschools, and I also have this other thing that helps marketers. We can get deeper into it if you'd like. But one of the first ways that I made money, and this is, I didn't plan to wear this t-shirt, but I actually sold eggs to people from that my chickens laid, and they're expensive eggs because they're organic from my backyard. And I realized that I actually wanted to eat those eggs, and I didn't want to keep selling them. I wanted to consume my own goods, if you will. So that one was short-lived. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. This is one revelation after another. I'm learning so much about my co-hosts that I haven't in the past 2 years. This is amazing. So maybe we'll take a step back and go where we met. So we all met in a course called The Portfolio of Small Bets by Daniel Vassallo. And maybe we can get into our individual reasons for joining that, because I don't know if this was predestined, but we happened to meet there and we happened to say, oh, maybe we should start a podcast. And we threw our names in the hat and we all started this. I swear before that day or even that afternoon, I wouldn't have guessed that starting the following week, I would be on a podcast. That wasn't my intention when I joined the course. That wasn't my calling. I just did it because I thought it would be something cool to try as a side hustle, profitable or not. And here we are 2 seasons later. So I saw, I think, the post for the small bets cohort. And for me, it was about scratching an itch. I always wanted to do more things on the side, try things, but I was always afraid to. I think for fear of failure, for fear of the amount of work that might be involved, for fear of taking time away from my kids. So I had a lot of reservations. So I joined this just to see what it was all about and see what options there might be. That was my reason for joining. And I'm glad I did. If nothing else, this podcast came as a result of joining that. And I got to make wonderful friends that are here as co-hosts, that we go back and forth around amazing topics, not only related to engineering, but even around side hustles, entrepreneurship, and challenges we are facing in life or at work. So it's great to have other peers or friends to lean on. Maybe we can do a roundtable and see what your reasons were to join the small bets community.
Sure. I mean, myself, I was on a, let's say, trying to find my, let's say, a new thing in my career. I had just left Apple and I was on a sabbatical, and I have been following Daniel Vassallo for a couple of years, and I was following his journey and super impressive about what he was talking about and the whole, like, all the numbers that he was sharing. And I was always super enthusiastic about the topic of entrepreneurship, building SaaS companies and all that. And I think at the same time, I started to follow like Peter Levels and seeing all the indie development movement. And I was like, that's it. And when I heard the idea of small bets, like I have to go to this course, it was the perfect moment because I was like 2 or 3 months off. So I had nothing else to do during the day. So I joined the course, and it was the best thing I did because the community was like starting. I remember Louis was one of the first ones there, replying every single one of us on Discord. And yeah, it was great. Vic?
Sure. So I think, okay, here's how I remember it, okay? Louis, correct me if I'm wrong. So my interactions so the first person I met here was Louis, and our interactions were around charcuterie. I think I saw a cutting board that Daniel Vassallo had made, and Louis said something about that would be really great to put charcuterie on. And I replied back with, I'd never met this guy, and I replied back with pictures of the charcuterie that I had been eating. And he was like, we should be friends. And he added me. And then later on, I remember when Louis said something on Twitter about, oh, I got a lot of value from joining the small bets community, and I met a lot of people. And so when Daniel opened up the next cohort, I messaged Louis and I asked, okay, tell me more. And Louis was like, yeah, it's totally worth it, man. You got to join. I joined the course. My reasons for joining were, so I wanted some extrinsic motivation from other people, call it a support group, if you will, of other people that I could talk to, because it felt like on Twitter, it felt very much like hustle porn. People only talked about, I made such and such money or whatever. No one talked about failures at the time, I felt. Like it was just all glorified stuff. No one really talked about the realities of trying to run different things. And my brain just works in a way where I need to have lots of different things going on. So this really like related to me. So that was my motivation. I'm very glad to have joined and met all you people. And we don't just talk only on the podcast, right? We WhatsApp sometimes too. I feel like I made friends.
Yeah, I feel very similarly relate to a lot of what you said. I joined because that's how my mind works as well. I'm always thinking about and doing like 10 different things. And I actually think that's why I wasn't cut out to be a startup founder. I just can't focus on one idea or one business for 10 years straight. It makes me go crazy. And I feel like everything that we've seen, at least until maybe a year or two ago, was like the only way to success and the only way to be like great, especially in tech, is to be a startup founder or to work in a startup and be obsessed with one thing. And then seeing that there was this whole community of people who were like, no, you actually can be really successful. You can be financially okay. And you can also try a bunch of different things. You don't have to focus on just one area of focus and be happy. I was like, wow, I can't believe this exists. And this was actually, I made my husband buy this course as a Christmas present for me. And he knew that I was really into this idea of like small bets. And yeah, I was so surprised that this podcast came out of it. I couldn't be happier for one, meeting everyone on this podcast, but two, being able to like talk about the topics that we do talk about and see that people actually appreciate it or getting value from it. These are things that I just assumed was like common knowledge or nobody really cared about to hear. And so that's been really cool. But also with just this mindset of unlocking that fear and that kind of boundary of what you can do. I've put out stuff around direct to consumer work and CPG. And then I'm also doing like a product testing Substack. That's not related to anything, but it's just fun to be able to explore all of my interests and try a bunch of things and not hold so much value to each one. And it was just so important. I feel like I've recommended the small bets course to like 5 people, because it's not, even if that's how you think and what you want to do, just being around that group of people and seeing Daniel tell me what is in my head. I'm like, oh my gosh, now I have like a framework to apply my thought process to, Louis?
Yeah, I joined, I guess, when it was maybe 4 months after I'd sort of quit my job, and I was kind of grasping at straws, but I was like at a point where my bank account was dwindling, the startup thing wasn't making money, and it was making some money, but it wasn't doing all that great. And so I was just like looking to learn different things, like how are people making money? How can I extend my runway? I'm very lucky. I invested a little bit as an engineer. Engineers have one really big benefit, right? Like we have nice W-2s. And so we can use that to buy. We can use a W-2, we can lever it basically. And I was lucky, I levered mine and I bought some real estate. It's not a lot of real estate, but it's at least enough to have a roof over my head. So I was like, look, if I could even just find a way to make, I don't know, 100 grand or whatever, then I might be able to continue on this sort of entrepreneurial journey. And I was grasping at straws. I took a bunch of courses. I took Minimalist Entrepreneur, which is no longer running, by Sahil Lavinia. I was like, these people are making money somehow. I need to figure this whole sort of game out. And at the time when I took small bets, it was not a community. It was just a course. And then Daniel he had the Discord, but it was like locked, like it had cohort 1 or 2. And then eventually I think he opened up all these other channels. And very quickly, at least for me, the one benefit of a big company is that like you have a company chat and you could just chat basically. You can go in there and then talk with people. And you miss that when you're kind of on this world, you kind of miss that. And so for me, it became this place where I would just go in, just like Thiago said, every day. I would just check what other people are doing and like chat with random strangers about what they're working on, and they're working on random stuff. And it was actually really cool. And I mean, in terms of finding inspiration and stuff like that. And then obviously it ended up being pretty good for collaboration because we started this thing. But what's really interesting to me about this whole thing, right, is that all of you sort of jumped in there, I jumped in there, is that there's a huge interplay, I think, between side projects and successful careers and all this other stuff, right? So there are a lot of people in small bets that have full-time jobs that are, I mean, Hassan Osman, for example, he's a director at Cisco, I forget where, but he's got all these books and he's making a bunch of money on the side from that. And so it's a fascinating thing. I think one of the things, part of what attracted me to that is that I've always had small bets, even if I've always been doing those kinds of things, even if they haven't made money. And yeah, so I think there's a huge interplay. Basically, all of us are pretty successful in terms of our careers, and yet we met in this thing. And so I think it's telling that side projects are probably good and people should start them, even if you have a career, even if you don't plan to quit your job, even if you love your job. Just learning something and by trying different things, meeting different people, expanding your network outside of just your job, probably pretty good. So I joined as a way to find a way to make some money, and then sort of stuck around because of all these cool people in there. But then now looking back, I think that there's a huge interplay. And so I guess I'm sort of teeing up the next thing. What do you guys think about having side projects and all of this stuff?
I think something you said about, even if you plan on, not quitting your job and keep working, doing this, now it's so important to take that to heart, because you may not plan on quitting your job, but your job may plan on firing you. And I think we're seeing that across the board. There's no job security whatsoever, even if you are the best of the best and in an industry or a company that supposedly doesn't fail and has a ton of money. And I'll be super vulnerable here. That actually happened to me just a few weeks ago. I wasn't planning on quitting for at least a month or two. And I had just come back from maternity leave. I know a lot of women. I actually put out a post asking, like, what do I do? It's literally only been a month. And the number of women who have gotten let go within a month or two of them coming back from maternity leave is astounding. So I bet in this time in the economy, especially, it's tenfold. And the fact that I had small bets already going, and I can talk more about what they are specifically later, but that saved me. That made sure that I didn't go into this downward spiral. My family and finances wise, we are okay. It just gives you a cushion, but also makes it feel like I felt a sense of relief. I was planning or hoping to plan to leave at some point because I wasn't super happy with focusing on one thing and working under management and having to manage other people, even though I've literally made my career as a manager. But now having all of these other interests and side hustles and small bets to lean back on, it's just made a world of a difference. So especially if you're kind of depending on your job as the one thing that'll keep you and your family afloat, I think it's super, super imperative to do other things.
Thanks for sharing, Mitra. I didn't know of any of this before we started recording the episode. So thank you for being vulnerable and thank you for sharing. Maybe we can get into how you folks picked your side hustle and what your recommendations are for others to pick their side hustles, right? I'll be honest. So recently, I think Sean had a workshop for the small bets community saying how to make $500 by this weekend as your side hustle on Upwork. So I'll be honest, I gave it a try. I was highly motivated, encouraged. I tried for 3 weeks straight and I just made $10 US, that is. So $13 Canadian. But it wasn't really the $500 by the weekend that was advertised. I also took the LinkedIn course by Justin Welch. And I'll be honest, my follower count is pretty stagnant for the past 6 months, let's say. So a lot of side hustle, and I think Vic called it side hustle porn, right? So a lot of it is glamorized on Twitter as, oh, here are my earnings, here are my followers, or this is what I've accomplished, and I'm on my 26th startup. But behind the scenes, there are a lot of failures, and it's very hard to pick which one to focus on, right? Do you focus on building an audience on Twitter? Do you post more regularly on LinkedIn? Do you double down and do deep work and start building something and using that as proof points that you have some credibility about what you're saying? So I'm just curious about where you guys go for inspiration or where you start your side hustle.
Yeah, this is a really great point you're bringing up, right? This happens a lot, and it happened to me a lot. A lot of my projects would fail, but I think this is what I sort of love about Daniel and what he teaches and the way he teaches small bets is that he tells you a lot of it's out of your control, right? You're hearing all these things. There's so much randomness in this game that if you're foolish, basically, if you invest 6 months or a year into something and then it doesn't work out, and I took that to heart. That was the thing, I think, that completely changed my mindset, basically. It's just like you said, you spent a whole bunch of time trying to make $10 on Upwork. I would recommend, basically, if you can't make something happen in 2 weeks or a month with that, then just drop it. And it's go on to the next thing. And one of the reasons why I think that's so important, and I was actually talking to my brother about this the other day, is, because he's thinking about putting something out and he's just spending too much time on it, in the AI space. And I'm just like, the thing is, you're better off, in my view, doing nothing, than spending 6 months. And he's like, why would that be? Because if you spend 6 months and the thing fails, then you are demoralized, then you are done. Like, forget it. You're not going to go on to the next thing. If that last thing you spent 6 months and it failed, you have to get it out in a month, or it's not for you. It's for somebody else. And a lot of engineers hate hearing this because obviously software takes a while. You could produce, there's very few software you could put out in a month's time. Most SaaS products will require months or a year. And I think this was the mindset shift. It's okay, I don't need to do software. I could do something else. For me, it was recording the video course. That was the first one. I was very lucky. That was a hit. But there was signal there, right? There was people who were liking my tweets and my threads and that advice. And so the course ended up being a hit. But I guess the point is that you don't want to get into a situation where you are beaten afterwards and then you don't want to pick anything up. That's the worst kind of, that's not a small bet. And you only have so many 6-month or 1-year periods in your entire life. And so you really want to try to compress it. And so how can you do it with software? I mean, we see a lot of the people in the small bets community. I mean, there's no shame in saying this is for like somebody who has resources. And you might be the person that has resources in 6 months or a year. Now, Daniel Vassallo's in that spot where he has resources. He's making he's cash flowing. So he could literally he's paying people to do things for the community. So for him, that's a small bet now. But that would never be a small bet for me to pay people to do something. That would be a big bet. Now I'm putting a lot of resources against something. And so I think, this whole idea of small bets is basically based on where you are and how much you can afford, how many resources you can afford to put. And there's no shame in saying this bet is for somebody else because actually I can't pull it off. And so my mindset is I'd rather just chill, right? I'd rather let 2 weeks and wait for inspiration to strike and say, you know what, this I could do. I mean, I could do this in a weekend and I'm going to try it. And I mean, I just have these bursts of energy that come out of nowhere. I want to build a Discord bot. I'm going to do it in a weekend. I mean, if I can't do it in a weekend, then forget it. Discord bot's not getting done. And that's the end of it. I think this is a mindset shift. A lot of engineers need to take this to heart because it's really punishing. I don't know if somebody else has a different opinion on this, but I really think it's important for people when they're picking their side hustles to limit their resources, limit their spend. I don't know. How does everybody else pick their sort of side hustles?
So for me, I pick things that are sort of problems I experience. And then I think someone really ought to fix that. And then I go, wait, I'm going to fix that, right? The example here is that, so I was on a sabbatical because I had worked at this company for 10 years. So I was on a sabbatical. It was a 1-month sabbatical, not very long, but I had nothing to do. And I was filling out paperwork to get my kid into preschool. And you basically had to fill out sheets and sheets of paper and you had to drive over there. You had to hand it in. You had to write a check and drop it into a shoebox. And then they would write to you to say your kid either got in or didn't get in, or they were like snail mail, or they'd be like, we need more information. Maybe they might call you, right? Now, Kater's laughing, but this is how it happens in a majority of this country. So I was like, okay, that's really annoying. So I did that the first year, but the second year I was like, wait, you mean to tell me I have to do all of that all over again? I already gave you this information. Add 1 to her age. She doesn't have any new allergies. That's it. Nothing has changed. I live in the same place. My phone number is the same. I shouldn't have to do this. But I didn't say any of that until they had a new preschool director join. And she was introducing herself and she said, wow, I just came into this office and there's a whole bunch of paper. And I was like, really? So I came home, I sent her an email and I was like, hi, my name is Vic. I'm the parent of this kid who goes to your school. And for a day job, I actually create forms and deal with like workflows and making things happen. And I'd love to help you solve this problem. And I was like, she's really going to tell me to fuck off. But she wrote back saying, I'm so happy that he emailed me. I would love to chat. And so I went and sat down and I was like, cool, here's someone that wants for me to actually solve this problem. And I desperately want to solve this problem as someone who simply does not want to fill out forms. So that's how that whole project started. Now, there's plenty of things that went wrong and that went right. There's a lot that has changed in my kind of opinion about the amount of time that you should spend on a project. Now, the very first time that I built this, I did this with the fastest possible way. I did Airtable and some forms and I sent out emails, and it's still used, by the way. It's still used for camp registration and preschool registration. Something that used to take them, 60 hours now takes them 3 hours. In terms of the actual value that I've provided to people that I know, it's massive and they love me for it. Then we had a second kid and I needed to fill out all these forms all over again. And so I was like, okay, so this project is helping me again. But I think I would do a lot of this stuff differently. And I think what small bets really, and just like being in the community and laying these out in front of people and getting opinions. The power of community really helped me with is that I should ship sooner. And the thing that I can't agree with is killing the projects that don't work out, because these are all my babies, and I feel like I can't do that. But the thing is, it's important to realize that some projects may just never make it, and you need to treat them as shots on goal. And the more shots on goal you take, it also means that the more likelihood that there will be that some of them will make it in. And that, I think, took me way too long. Another thing that I think really that I was helped out by from how I find my side hustles is purely just what situations I'm in. So I had to go and see my foot doctor today. Like, I slipped and fell the other day, and I thought I had a small fracture. And I texted my friend, who happens to be a foot and ankle doctor, and he was like, "Come on in tomorrow." And I was like, "All right, I'm gonna like drop the kids off at school and show up." And we got to talking, and he was like, "What have you been up to lately?" And I told him what I've been up to. And he's like, "Yeah, so my practice just got really big, and there's all this stuff, and we really are looking for some help with X, Y, and Z." And I was like, "Excellent, let's go get lunch next week and we can talk about it." Like, I just find myself working on working on things that are like around things I do. I just rarely go out and find something. I'll give counterexamples later. But anyway, that's how I find my projects.
How I used to pick side hustles. So at the beginning, it was more like people would refer me as, okay, there is this guy that I know that's a developer, and there is this company or this person that wants to do some web application. And then I would just connect and do that, more freelancing, right? But then I moved to the US in 2014, and over the years, I saw how my income grew exponentially just by moving to a different country, right? And by being on a much better market for engineers. And over the years, I started to receive a lot of people like from Brazil, like asking me, how do you get a visa? How do you get an interview? What do you do? All that, right? And I was, oh, maybe there is a need here. And I start to give interviews and all that of people that had YouTube channels in Brazil. And one of my first bets was, okay, I'm going to write a book to help more people to take their career abroad. And then I interview a bunch of other Brazilians that live around the globe in different tech hubs to ask their journey, how they got there. And that took me a lot of time. It was like a year, like doing interviews, writing. And then I had a conference talk to give, and I pretty much shared everything that I learned on this. And instead of writing a book, I wrote a massive LinkedIn article that's like almost like 50 pages long. It's almost like I could easily have published that as an ebook looking back now, right? But everything that I learned is there. And that was like the inspiration came from a problem and from something that I did. And I saw a big potential for people to start to earn more money, start to move like to different places that would pay more, and they would be able to help their family. They would be able to create other companies in Brazil. And I think that there was a big benefit there. And then like lately, I think when I left Apple, I was more on the top of the top when it comes to income as an engineering manager. And I was like, I had a lot of people after I started to write some threads on Twitter asking me, okay, how did you prepare? And I end up like spending a lot of time during my early small bets days developing this course that I never launched. And like I put together all the notes. I had like hundreds of pages of notes, and I got the feedback, no, the notes are not going to sell. You should not do that. It's too much. And I end up like not launching it. And then I was on my last week of sabbatical before returning to my job. It was like trying to rush to finish the course. And it was just not, I recorded the whole thing, but it was just not that good. And I decided to abandon it. And then, okay, I'm going to do in May, but then life came, and I have been like procrastinating on that since then. And I have sent all the notes and maybe coach maybe 20, 30 people over the last year that just email me or just DM me. And I'm
And
not
Thiago,
making money.
just a question, Thiago. This was the product where it was about getting into big tech, was it?
Yeah, I was getting into the big tech as an engineering manager, doing the
Nice.
transition from
Nice.
from tier 2 to tier 1, right? That the whole thing. And yeah, but I also, as Vic was saying, I think I changed a lot my mindset around that, and I spend like a lot of more time than I should on those projects, on those small projects. While like I could have easily put something together and just ship it, and just to measure how would that have been. And I think I lost a lot of momentum on that. And now the market has completely shifted, right? I think there's always a need for interviews and all that, and people are interviewing more than ever. But that's another thing is the one thing that Vassalo and I think Peter Levels and all the other guys, they keep saying is don't feel bad about abandoning things. Don't get attached emotionally to your projects. There's this guy that did 120 websites in 120 days. Peter Levels did 12 projects in 12 days or in 12 months, and just move on. I think this is it's easy to say, it's hard to do because you can easily get attached and try to get things perfect.
Yeah, so I kind of alluded to this in my intro, but my first thing that I put out after joining the Small Bets course was literally like a Google Sheets or Excel template of, I actually took my fancy like calculations that I'd made for my own startup, templatized it, and put it up for like $5. And I think I posted in one of the Facebook groups that I used to frequent as a CPG founder. And I got a few sales and I was like, this is a rush. Like, this is insane. But before I had even looked at giving or doing anything for money, I think that was the big switch for me joining the Small Bets course, that I could actually charge for this stuff. But I started this product review blog I think a year before, and I was always doing things on the side. Some of my friends will remember when I started my very first job as a software engineer at Amazon, I decided that wasn't enough, and I started selling jewelry on the side. Question mark, don't know how that connects to anything, but I guess taught me sales, taught me some marketing, taught me about like PR and how to walk up and do like a cold sale, and that was really scary. And I did that for 2 years, became like one of the top 10 sellers in the nation, like made a ton of money through that. And it was very confusing because it was so different, but that's again how my mind always worked. I think something that we really got in the Small Bets community and through me doing more and more of these small bets over the last year or two is that we should sell our sawdust, as Daniel always says. And that didn't really hit, I think, honestly, until we did this podcast. Because again, I feel like we're talking about things that all of us are like, yeah, this makes sense. And this is things we've just learned over our career. And then we hear how helpful it is to folks and how these are things that people haven't thought about or haven't heard of yet. And it's pretty crazy to think that these are things just sitting in our minds and we don't really see the value in it because we've just been experiencing it so much until we put it out there in a newsletter, in a podcast, in a product, and see the value in that. So I've gone maybe the opposite way of Vic, where I'm not building a ton of things. I have all the ideas. I don't have probably the patience to build all of them just yet, or maybe it's the momentum, but that's how I focused my first small bets.
Thank you for sharing, Mitra. Yeah, I think Justin shared in one of his posts that everyone has a PDF or a folder or some file sitting on a Google Drive or somewhere on their laptop that they can easily either templatize or clean up, dust off, and start selling on Gumroad or online on some online marketplace. This could be their tiny bet, right? Just to see what it is to make their first dollar online and how much work it takes. Maybe just switching gears a little bit, is entrepreneurship the same as side hustle? And I might get some flack for stereotyping, but a lot of engineers are introverted. They don't want to go out and do sales because that was never their calling, that was never their training. And there's a reason that they went down the engineering path so that they never have to talk to anyone, go heads down, build something cool, and be done with it. I'll be honest, when I started my startup, there was so much other crap that now I had to suddenly deal with: bookkeeping, sales, SEO, marketing, doing cold pitches, trying to get funding. All of this wasn't something that I had signed up for. I wanted to build something cool and ship it quickly, but now I had all these other peripheral things that I had to take care of that I had no formal training in or interest in doing. So in these instances, do you pair up with someone, or do you just take on a smaller project with lesser scope? Or do you delegate to someone that is good at it and it comes intrinsically to them, but would feel like a lot more effort for you? How do you define a side hustle versus starting a small company, and where do you draw the line?
So I think there is this huge push by VCs, by not just VCs, the incubators, all these firms that want you to just go at a really hard problem and act like a traditional employer, right? And it's pretty crazy to think about that. Usually the VCs or the incubators give them a few dollars and they eat ramen and they try. And it's just the shot. It's such a long shot. It's such a long shot. And to me now, thinking back that I was ever going to do that, it just feels like crazy, right? It just feels nuts. If I can't even find a way to make a couple of dollars, like why would I make $1 million? Like, how can you reconcile those things? How are you going to make it? Why are you building something that scales to 1 million users if you don't even have one user? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Like, you're wasting your time. You're going to realize in 6 months that I built something that scales. I built something that does all these things. And so I really think that it's really like a false dichotomy, like thinking about it from is this like worrying about bookkeeping and all this nonsense. You just need to make some money. Think about how this podcast started, right? We we messaged on a Discord channel, and then we set up a meeting. And then after that one meeting, we brainstormed like 3 ideas, and then we started recording. That's it. The podcast was born. I'd say this is a fairly successful podcast. People have been listening to it, right? Thank you for listening to it. But the point is that I'd say this is a success. And this is basically just, and this might get monetized. Maybe we're certainly hoping to monetize this season somehow. And so this might get monetized. And so no one's done any bookkeeping. No one's worried about any of that. You worry about that stuff when you need it. The thing is, especially as engineers, you're way more capable than you realize. If you got to scale the damn thing, you could rewrite it. If you wrote the original thing, you could rewrite, you could scale it. And so I think don't waste your time on that kind of stuff, basically, and just try to get to some money and then worry about the company stuff. Like, I think it's crazy that I was thinking the other way, Kira. I know what you're saying. Like, I know so many people, even, for example, my friend Jonathan, he's a very senior level IC there, distinguished engineer. He did a startup himself with 2 people. They were eating ramen for a year and it failed. And then he got burnt out, went back to that traditional path. And then he's very burnt. He doesn't really want to do it again. But recently he started placing small bets. He put out a little book similar to what Thiago was talking about. And the thing did pretty well. He made some money. He's very happy. He's made more money than his startup. It's crazy, right? And he has no bookkeeping. He doesn't know anything about any of that in this thing. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. You worry about that stuff when you need it. I promise someone's going to help you. If you have money, someone's going to help you. Like, they're going to help you. Like, someone's going to help you with bookkeeping. You just say, hey, I'm making money and I need help.
Yeah, I take issue with one thing that Kayer said, which is that most engineers are introverts, right? So I'm not, but I will agree that I don't want to do sales. I enjoy talking to my product manager. I enjoy talking to all my other engineers and teams that use my product, but I don't want to go do sales, which I think is something which I think sales and marketing are that strength that a lot of engineers lack. So I actually also really enjoy my 9 to 5, and I love my job and I love that support that gives me. So I do side projects as a way to keep my skills fresh and relevant. It's like my side projects are not even in the same stack or language or domain that my work is in. So I get to deal with some completely new thing, stay in tune with the hype cycle, whatever is like hot on Twitter or whatever these days. And so because of that, I also think smaller. I have no interest in going and starting a company. What I'm interested in, several things that maybe make $10,000 a year, and far better than trying to go for $1 million a year startup or something like that. If one of these things does a breakaway and starts heading that way, that's great. It will mean that I would have found a winner. And it's like buying 100 lottery tickets or something. I don't know. This analogy is not going to work. But yeah, it's like that for me. And I want to say this is also because doing sales and marketing is not my natural strength. I recently actually went and bought a SaaS. And we often like think about, should you build or should I buy, right? And that's a decision that we make as engineers at our companies all the time. And it's a decision that I really thought about. Do I want to, here, I just saw something really cool, and why don't I see if I could just go buy something that someone has already done? So I have a partner who is someone that I went to college with over 20 years ago, and he joined the small bets community as well. And we were talking about we should do something together, and we want to work together. And we went and bought this SaaS. We went halvesies. And what was really cool about that was that it was a already validated idea. It had existing customers. Someone had gone and done the job of figuring out what worked. This was one of their small bets. They tried out 10 things. This one worked. It makes money. And so we decided to buy it. And so it was great for me in that someone already experimented with all the different ways that you could go out and sell this thing. You go out and market this thing. So I don't have to do the experimentation of like, how am I cold calling people or what? I can just follow that playbook and continue to do that. And I was far more comfortable with that than trying to build something from zero and then figuring out how to sell it and figuring out how to get that first dollar. I don't have to get the first dollar. I need to start at the thousandth dollar. It's a lot easier after it's already been making some money.
Sorry, Vic. So just to jump in, I know you said a lot of your side hustles are to keep your skills sharp and maybe play around in a tech stack that you don't use at work, right?
I also like making money.
So that was my question. Should a side hustle be profitable, or should it be cash flow positive for it to be a side hustle? Or can it be just for the joy of it to keep your skills sharp, or just because you enjoy it? Like, is there a difference that you draw there on picking one that you know is a lot of fun to do, but it's not going to make you money in 6 months or a year, but you still do it for the joy of it? And one is a hard problem to solve, and it is probably going to make you money, but you're not sure, so you pursue it anyway.
I will ask if we all have hobbies that we don't monetize, right? And I do. I have a lot of hobbies that I don't monetize that I purely do for the joy of it. And I think of making small apps for friends similarly. So like the preschool thing that I run, I don't think we should measure the number of hours I've put into it and pay me an hourly wage. It is not, by that measure, it is not at all profitable, especially because I don't go out and sell it to more places. However, it makes the lives of some people that I like much better. So I really enjoy doing that. There's another SaaS that I worked on, and this was after I decided that I should not spend a lot of time on things. So I worked on a little messaging SaaS that just helped people get a phone number instantly and message people, and a combined inbox for multiple people. If you and your spouse and your family wanted a single number that you could like treat like email and log in and message, it was that. And I basically demoed this during my interview with Twilio. And we don't know if this is why I got the job or not, but I did end up there. So I look at it as it was successful. However, that has not made a single dollar ever. And it gets signups every single day. There's so many just like spam signups. And it's got some legit signups of people that decided it was not their thing. So that's one of those things where it was fun doing it. It achieved its objective. That needs to be killed.
Perfect segue. I do think though, if you don't have a plan or a way to monetize like a hobby or something, it's not a side hustle. Like totally, there's no shame in doing something for the fun of it, but a side hustle is inherently to make money. And so if there's no way to monetize that, it doesn't make sense to me. Going back to my product review newsletter, I was doing it for a year and a half. Absolutely no money coming in. In fact, I'm spending a ton of money on buying all these products to review. But as of a month or two ago, I turned on subscriptions for like extra things. And so now it's not like money coming in, but it's okay. This is now I can invest time and invest more effort into it. And it's a valuable thing for me to do other than just like speaking into the void. But I do want to quickly just like touch on doing a startup versus your career and side hustles at the same time, how that all works. Obviously, when I was doing my startup, I did not have a side hustle. My startup started as a side hustle and then ended up taking over my entire life. And that quickly showed me that is not the life for me. I so commend people who can do that, but I think we are all proof that is not the only way to be happy and successful in this industry or in just like building out a career for yourself. I personally really enjoy this side hustle, small bets approach much more because again, you can explore so many different things. So not only is it exploring different interests you have, I know Louis put out a book on real estate and like investing through that. And so that's very different from like literally everything we talk about here. But at the same time, you can also like jump on solving all the problems and all the ideas you have, like Vic is talking about. Again, I have my running list of 10 million ideas. And the fact that we can just do it and there's no almost guilt saying, okay, by me doing this, I'm taking time away from my job or my startup or the thing that actually needs my attention. You're giving yourself some grace to try on a bit of every hat and a bit of everything, and then follow your energy and your motivation. I definitely know that like my motivation ebbs and flows like crazy. And I think this approach to work also allows you to follow that instead of fight against it and force yourself to do shitty subpar work when you're feeling like not doing it at all.
That reminds me of a book called Ikigai, which I don't know if any of you have read it, but it basically has concentric circles around what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and what the world will pay you for. And at the center, at the intersection is your key to happiness, right? Along the lines of what Mitra is saying, that follow your passions, follow your energy, and then you'll find out where your success lies. Maybe we can get into some failures around what we took on and what we failed at. This could be in terms of money. This could be in terms of number of hours spent in and a project not going anywhere. This could be in terms of public embarrassment, anything that you folks want to share. Maybe I'll start. So with my startup, we grew it to about 14 people, some onshore, some offshore, completely bootstrapped, not a single dollar in funding. And we tried for 4 years. At one point, we were breaking even. This is not considering the number of hours put in. So forget sweat equity for now. Just in terms of money coming in, we were breaking even and putting in a lot of time in the weekends, in evenings. And for me, my breaking point was when I had my first child. I could see that I wasn't spending time with my kid, and that was what was important to me at that point, with no end in sight on when this thing would take off, right? So it was no longer a small bet. I was married to this idea. I wanted to see it succeed, which is why it pained a lot. And going back to my 9 to 5 was such a relief because I could work passionately for 8 hours, but sign off at the end of 8 hours and go be with my family, knowing that my paycheck was taken care of, I had vacation lined up, healthcare was taken care of, and all of that, right? Did I learn? Yes, I learned a lot around everything that I brought up on sales, marketing, bookkeeping, how to manage an offshore team, how to make the most of your dollars because you are spending your hard-earned after-tax dollars to grow your company, right? But in terms of failure, yeah, after 4 years, I have been very reluctant to go out and take any bets, knowing the stigma I felt with failure, right? Like to a point where I didn't tell any of my friends or my peers or my family members when I shut down the business. It was quietly die in the dark, not talk about it, and go back to doing my full-time job because I considered it a big failure, right? And I'll be honest, it took me a long time to get over that. And that's why when I saw the small bets community pop up, I had that itch again to, okay, maybe I am ready. Maybe I am okay to start something without feeling the guilt, right? In terms of the number of hours put in and shutting down my startup, I see that as a failure. But in terms of learnings, there were many that I still use to today. Maybe one of you want to go next and share.
Yeah, I mean, I totally feel you, man. And I feel it's like we all have some kind of trauma when it relates to side gigs, or in your case, was not really a side gig, was a a full-time job that you're not making any money, right? You're basically investing all your time and energy on a startup for 4 years. But I think I also consider myself that I fail in those like small bets that I tried to place recently, mostly because I was trying to get things close to perfection. And I was like, maybe taking the feedback from folks instead of like trying out my own instincts, right? I think there is also another thing is I think sometimes we over ask for feedback and we rely more on the feedback we receive than on our own instincts, and you have to ship it, right? And whenever something is ready or close to ready, you have to do it no matter what. I think is that, and if you ask for feedback, you're gonna get feedback that might be helpful, but it might be distracting. So I think a lot of people talk about the important role of feedback to get you to improve your product and all that. But I think for small bets, you have to be a little bit selfish about it and go for it. And you iterate later, right? You can always improve. As I think Louis was saying, right? If start selling, you can always pay someone to edit it, to improve it, but don't try to do that too early. Don't invest more than 2 weeks, right? Like on something without trying out. And yeah, there'll be always things to improve, but you don't need to do that if you have not sold a dollar.
Yeah, I can go down KR's same rabbit hole, I guess, of the biggest failure. And I totally agree, KR. It's so hard to get over that in terms of just your confidence, the guilt, the energy, I would say. Even sometimes it's been like 3 years since I shut my startup down and I still feel like I'm like reeling from it. So I totally get it. I think a smaller like side hustle thing that failed coming out of my startup, I really wanted to like immediately find something else to build based on it. And my grand idea was an investor update app. So something that just allows you to keep track of the metrics you send to your investors as a startup founder every month and keep the updates all in one place. I think there's 1 or 2 of these actually existing right now. I didn't end up actually like building this. I think I had 2 or 3 ideas like this that I made Figmas, I made the mocks, I even started actually like building them. And I hadn't actually built anything from scratch in so long that it just took me too long. And I was dealing with login flows and like the dumb things that you never think about. And I just got bored and stopped. But I will say it's not a failure because it was how I discovered Tailwind. I started playing around with like databases again. I hadn't left my Amazon cocoon of development in so long. I didn't know what was out there. And it was fun in that sense. I used Figma for the first time, really, and really just played around with all the new tools out there at the time. And have any of these seen the light of day? No, but you never know what'll happen.
Okay, so I had an app that transcribed articles. You just give it a link and it would use AI to read it out. Google had this really nice model a little while ago. This has gotten so much better, by the way. The thing, no one wants to listen to these like monotone. I should have known that, but anyway, I spent months building it, and it was mostly on my nights and weekends before I quit my job, and it was super demoralizing, basically. And I started thinking the reason why I keep failing with these side projects is because I'm not all in. And so then I quit my job and then I went all in. And right around December is when I started getting the existential dread. And I don't want to say I had a panic attack, but I did go to the hospital just to make sure that there was nothing wrong with my heart. And it was one of those things where they put this fluid through you and it goes through they monitor your heart they put you on a treadmill and they have you run. And the heart was totally fine. And so they're like, there's really nothing wrong with your heart. And I was like, but I know what I was feeling. It felt like I was having a heart attack. And then I was thinking the reason why this is happening is because I'm super stressed about this whole startup thing. The funny thing is my old boss, he really likes me. He was texting me like, when are you coming back? But that would be like the ultimate failure. I told everybody I'm quitting my job to chase my dreams of entrepreneurship. And here I am crawling back. But at least I put that burden on myself. And I was like, I am not, no matter what, I'm not going back. And anyway, all of that, so I got really lucky. If I hadn't made some money with I didn't make a lot of money with the video course at first. It was like, I don't know, like $3,000 in the first week or something. And then it picked up, and I think probably last year, the video course made 60 grand. In total, I made 100 grand between all the small bets, but it's not a lot of money, but it's this conviction that you can survive. And so once I got some money, it was like, wait, actually, I could probably do a bunch of these and somehow make more. And so it was like a weird realization. And I think the failure and just like that existential dread just pushed me over the edge to say, I am not too good to do these other things. I was convinced I need to do something big. I need to do a code. I built this distributed system that has 10 million users on it. Why can't I make money on my own? And it was like, it felt beneath me to do a PDF or like a video course. It felt, but you know what? And the thing is, time and effort invested does not equal money. It does not equal money in any way. And people need to get that out of their head. It took me like 4 days to put together the thing that made 60 grand. And it took 4 days for that video course. And the thing that people are paying you for a lot of the time, they're paying you for this information density. They're not paying you because it's beautiful. No one gives a shit if the thing is you're gorgeous and it has beautiful edits. They want to get promoted. They're buying the thing because they want to get promoted. And if they get promoted, then they love you. And that's what happened with my thing. Some people, it took a few months, but then once people started getting promoted, they were tweeting about it. And then they were just selling on its own. I'm terrible at marketing. If I would have been good at marketing, I probably could have made a lot more money with that course. But it doesn't matter. The real win was that I felt inside like I could make money. And I think that's huge. Like you got it. It's just a huge feeling to get out of a loss and get out of that dread and get to some dollars. And then from there, I think you could do a lot. I don't know. This has been my experience over the last year. I feel unstoppable this year. Sorry, guys. I'm being tired.
That's great. And I've heard this before from other entrepreneurs as well, that you have to burn your bridges knowing that there is no going back in order to be successful with your side hustle or successful at what you started, because knowing that you are going back is a failure to you, or that there is no safety net, there is no cushion that you can, so you have to make money, right? So with the side hustle, it's often, oh, it didn't work out. I have my 9 to 5, I have my paycheck. So you don't really, I'm not saying give it your all, but you're not as passionate because it's not do or die for you. Is that true? Can you have a successful side hustle while maintaining a fulfilling full-time career? Go ahead, Vic.
So I want to answer two things. One, I want to say like what you would consider a failure depends on what your success criteria is, right? If your success criteria is that you need to make $1, then that's going to be yours. For me, my success criteria was simply just shipping things, because my list of failures is not products that made zero money. It's ships that never left the dock. I have a long list of projects that I simply got bored of, or just completely lost motivation on and just didn't bother. I have a giant graveyard. My sawdust is all the projects that are in different stacks that I just stopped. And so for me, even though I have this product out there that makes $0, I still consider it a success that it went out. There's hundreds of spam users that are able to sign up on it. They're getting emails and this thing. I make a joke, but that really shipping that thing, getting it out there really was awesome for me, because it helped me standardize this kind of stack for the next thing I'm going to work on that is going to help me ship faster. And then I think your other question was around, can you really be successful at a side hustle with a 9 to 5, right? And you talked about burning bridges. I am not going to talk about that because I don't think that's a good idea, but because sometimes you really may need to go back. But I'm gonna say one of the difficult things is when do you find time, right? So for me, if I quit my 9 to 5, I'm going to have way more time to spend on my side projects, which is often the thing that they need, is that they simply don't have time. Because right now, all I do is I work on my side projects after my kids are in bed. So it's they're in bed at 8 o'clock, it's 8 on, it's like after 8, or if I have the day off or whatever, and like I send everyone out of the house, that's really the only time I work on my side projects. So it's what's important to me is like spending time with my wife watching Netflix or just talking important to me, is reading important to me, is sleep important to me. Because if sleep was not important to me, I would totally work until 2 in the morning every single morning, and I would get a solid 6 hours of side project work every single day done. But it's hard, right? When you have other things that you have to care about, when you need to know what happens on Indian matchmaking this season, it's hard to sit there with your laptop in bed and still like work at your side project.
Thank you for sharing. I can totally relate to that. Maybe we can round up with what some good side hustle ideas would be for engineers. Something that might be easy to get into or might come naturally to engineers, and where they might find such work. I know there are sites like, I think, Upwork, Fiverr, I think there's TopTal, and depending on what your skill set is, you can start there and start based on availability, based on your skill set, and start building your portfolio or your clientele there. I know you can do a newsletter and start sharing what knowledge you have and what is your sawdust. I know Louis has a course that teaches you how to write good newsletters. Are there any other areas that you recommend that might be easy to pick side hustles for engineers?
I think if you're not sure what to go after right away, if you don't have something pulling you an idea, I know we don't call this in typically side hustles, freelancing or consulting can actually be a really great way to just see what's out there. And you don't have to do it just as an engineer if that's your profession. I started over a year ago doing fractional CTO work for very small startups. And it was like very specific niches. And it would be a niche that I'm very familiar with, like direct to consumer work. And often in these cases, you have non-technical founders who are just trying to figure out how do they build and scale their businesses. So that's a good example of some way that I could flex my interests, my experience. I wasn't necessarily doing more EM work for them, but I was able to then see like different businesses out there, meet a bunch of different people who are working on different ideas, so I could see if there's anything that intrigued me. And then
where can you find this sort of work, Mitra? Is this word of mouth? Is there a website?
Yeah, I think it's talking to as many people as possible. I mentioned to a friend in business school I was interested in this. She connected me to someone who connected me to someone who had opportunities, and then also someone who was doing a startup themselves. And I haven't talked about it much yet. I plan on talking about it more soon, but I think just talking about and putting yourself out there and saying like, this is something I'm interested in, you'd be surprised how many opportunities there are, especially right now in this economy. The fact that full-time jobs are less and there are less of them, but that means there's more of these freelance opportunities. So you'll find that a lot of companies are just interested in hiring people hourly, maybe for a specific role or kind of a generalist role, and it could be a cool opportunity. So I would start by, I've heard of many people just talking to their friends or past coworkers and saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you know anyone? And then they're hiring. That's one way to get into it if you don't have an idea right away.
Go ahead, Louis.
I would basically say, don't limit your options. I think the biggest problem that engineers have is that we think we should only be doing code. That's a problem I had, right? And I think, or we should only do something related to code. It should either be code, or we should talk about code, or we should write a book about code, there's nothing wrong with that. You should maybe start there, but I don't think you should limit yourself, because there are side effects, so many good side effects from so many different things. Let's say you do start a newsletter. You're not talking about code. You're talking about, I don't know, just a short update on your life or whatever's going on, and you're building relationships and you're becoming a better communicator. How's that going to hurt you that you're becoming a better writer and a better communicator, and you're building this a small audience or whatever it is, at least you have a group of people that you can ping on a regular basis. And so I just feel like don't limit your options and then chase inspiration. Like, so I'm gonna tell you something funny. I had this, and inspiration can come in a lot of places, but you do need to expose yourself to inspiration. So I think you either need to be on Twitter or you need to be in one of these communities like Small Bets, or I'm in this other community called Rite of Passage, where there's a lot of people that love to write, and they're also doing other stuff too. And one of the people in there recently started a YouTube channel. And we were just talking in this group chat. It was a Zoom, and he raises his hand and says, look, I've been sucking at writing. My newsletter's not growing. But a few months ago, I put a YouTube channel together, and it's just me walking, and I record myself and I talk about something that I know something about. And he said, I got monetized 28 days ago. And guess what? I made 10 grand in the last 28 days. I'm like, what the hell? You made 10 grand in the last 28 days just walking around, recording yourself on the iPhone, and there's no edits to the video. There's none of that. And he said, yeah, I made 10 grand and I'm probably going to make $1 million this year. And I was like, what the hell? Whoa, what's going on? He said, yeah, I am. And he said, I could just see it already. If I just keep going, I'm going to make $1 million this year. And it's the most, and now I'm inspired. Now I cannot stop thinking about just walking around and recording myself and putting a YouTube channel. Who the hell would not try it at that point? And so my point is, don't limit yourself and go after the thing that inspires you and just try it and time box it and just say, I'm going to do this for a month or two. And if I see no progress, or whatever success metric you have, your success metric could be very different. It might not even be money. It might just be, I want to build a network. It might just be, I want to get some attention. It might be, like Vic said, I want to learn a different stack. There's so many engineers right now that are like just tied at the hip at their employer, and if they get fired, they don't even know anything. They don't know any other infrastructure outside of that infrastructure at work. I just saw this tweet recently that basically they're struggling on interviews because that's all they know is this proprietary stack. And so whatever your goal is, try the thing. If you're making progress, if time box it. If you're not, go to the next thing. Wait, inspiration will hit you. If you're exposing yourself, you're going to see other people. And I can't explain it, but it happens to me all the time where I see somebody doing something really cool and I say, let me try it. Let me try it. If I can find that I can stick with it, then I'm going to keep going. But if I can't, so rule number 1, don't limit yourself. Rule number 2, when you are inspired, take action, right? Do not sit on that. Like that will disappear. Run to the keyboard or pick up your iPhone and start recording. I already recorded 3 videos. So anyway, but do it. Don't wait, because it's going to disappear. And then good luck bringing that back. It's not coming back. Anyway, so those are my tips for engineers. Don't limit yourself. You can build a lot of peripheral communication. Is a really good thing to build. A network is a really good thing to build. Money is a really good thing to build. All of these are good things that will happen if you just try something. Thiago, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I love your tips. I think the info product space is huge, right? And I think we don't necessarily need to build a SaaS product to be successful. But I think one thing, though, that I feel like while we are against of working on a proprietary tech stack, I think it's great if you have your own tech stack that you crafted over the years, and you can build a project and spin up a website, an app in a weekend, right? And I think one thing that I have done in the past is I would go on this. So I would need to build an app. And I actually, 2017, 16, maybe, I built an app for my wife that was around basically to have all the beauty shops in New York on a single app, and was like kind of Google Maps, but it was niched. And the thing that I did that kind of made me do that in like maybe 2 weeks was I start to look for these websites that have templates of app. They have the crude apps, all that. And I would pay like $100 to have an app that was already close to what I wanted to go. And then I would just like change a few things, but keep the same design. I would buy the template and then just modify to have it close to what I wanted and ship it. That would save me a lot of time, because just like setting up a new project, it would take me a lot of time. So then the other thing that I know a few of the indie developers that I follow do is they have their own stack. Is it PHP, whatever it is. And whenever they are going to build a new idea, they never start from the ground up. They always start from something that they're really familiar with, and they can like quickly do the core of the thing, but reuse a lot of that. And I think you should have your own tech tech stack to put products, if you're going to do SaaS or apps, out there really quickly. You cannot afford like spending time this defining architecture. Fuck that. You just have to put out there, and you can refactor later if that comes to go anywhere. But you should assume that is not gonna grow. Instead of assuming that's gonna grow, you assume that is gonna go crickets. I think that's the thing I would say. But and the other thing, and that's a lesson that I learned myself, is exactly what you're saying, Louis. Don't, like, your inspiration is not gonna last forever, and before it is gone, ship it, even if it's not 100% out there. And you can ship and sell and say, folks, it's 50% there. I'm selling this, and are gonna be, depending on how much people are yet financing it, they're gonna be building. Otherwise, it's gonna be basically, you get the draft and you don't know exactly when you're going to be finishing it, but at least you get part of the work in progress. And a lot of people appreciate getting that early view of your work, right? And it's all about information since you're solving a problem. But yeah.
So I will give a big +1 to the whole concept of making your own stack, but which, by the way, does not mean inventing your own framework. It does mean, however, coming up with a skeleton stack that allows you to easily spin up new projects, right? There's this one problem that I would have. I would come up with this idea on a dog walk or whatever, and then I would come home and I would spend probably the next, let's say, several days to a week spinning up the scaffolding of a new project, coming login and blah, 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 right? And then by the time you're done with all this crap that needs to be done for everything, you run out of inspiration. You run out of just excitement to work on this anymore. So what I realized was I was really excited, and this stuff that really excited me was also the least useful part of the software for anybody else. They don't care how you're doing login. But it was really exciting for me. I want to go spin up a Auth0, this, that, and I would spend so much time on it. So I solved that problem effectively by coming up with a skeleton stack. So now when I decide, I want to create a service that helps restaurant workers find substitutes, I can spin up a skeleton stack for that in roughly 40 seconds. And I can start working on this right away while the excitement is still fresh, while inspiration, which is a limited commodity, is still full, and I'm not wasting time, right, building this whole thing. And Kater has told me before, I should sell that as a template or a SaaS. Everyone owns one of their own, right? Yeah, but one thing I realized,
and I was laughing when I say it, because you're not the only one that suffers through this, right? And I think
and people have asked me before, like, right, what do you use for this? And I'm like, so I tell them that, and they're like, oh, okay. Does it exist? No, it doesn't exist. You can go make your own. You can spend your own week. But what I find that, like, building a project always leads me to find things that, like, are problems in that whole process that I then write down as things that need to be solved. I'm building a thing for preschools, let's say, right? So I'm building this thing, and then they say, sometimes people want to fax us. What? Okay. Yeah, it like allows you to, like, you encounter problems as you're doing these things, and you just write them down. And then you realize sometimes you can break those off, turn them into their own micro SaaS products. Like you don't have to have a whole thing that does like a billion things, right? So my advice for really coming up with ideas is think of anything. Like think of, like, I want to solve the problem of how can I more easily find plumbers? Okay, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to make a directory of plumbers in this area. That's how you're going to start with this. You're going to make a website that creates a directory of plumbers. And then you're going to start writing those down. And you're going to realize there really isn't like a good way for me to contact these plumbers. I should get a phone. Yeah, you're just going to keep running into these things. I'm going to actually go do that next. That, like, you're going to basically come up with inspiration for yourself for the next thing you're going to do.
I think that this is a good place to wrap up. This also brings us to the end of our season 2. And this is an amazing episode. I got to learn a lot about my co-host that I didn't know earlier. And we got a lot of quality tips and tidbits from our own experience, and everyone has had a different journey getting here. So I think it's great. So ship small, ship often, and your failures will be your own success. So define your own metrics and it'll be considered a win no matter what. Thank you for listening. See you soon.